The wind came hard across the plain, bending the tall grass until it whispered like water. Clouds stacked heavy and dark, rolling low as if the sky meant to press the land flat. On the edge of that open stretch stood a broken shack, boards split and roof torn thin by years of storms. A woman balanced on the slanted planks, one bare foot searching for hold, a hammer raised in her shaking hand. Each strike rang sharp against the wood, small and brave against the thunder that gathered close. She worked alone. That was the way of her days now. Her dress was faded and patched, sleeves rolled past the elbow, hair tied back with a strip of cloth. Rain had already darkened the fabric along her back. She did not look up when the wind howled, nor when lightning split the sky. She only drove the nail home and reached for another board. Frontier life had taught her what waiting could cost. Below her, the door hung crooked, cloth flapping where a window once stood. Inside lay little more than a dirt floor and the memory of warmth. It was not a home yet. It was a shelter made from broken boards and stubborn will, the kind a woman built when the world gave her no choice. Once, there had been another set of hands. He had died the previous winter, buried on a rise where the ground stayed dry. Fever took him slow, leaving her to listen to his breath fade while snow pressed against the walls. When spring came, it brought no relief. Only debt, hunger, and the quiet looks of an old West town that did not know what to do with a widow and her children. She drove another nail and paused to steady herself. Far off, a horse moved through the grass, its rider dark against the storm. She did not turn. She already knew who it was. He had been standing there for some time, watching from a distance like a man unsure where he belonged. His hat was pulled low, coat worn thin at the elbows, posture stiff as if the ground itself judged him. He had the same eyes as his brother. That truth struck harder than the thunder. He had not come when the grave was filled. He had not come when the roof fell in during the last storm. But now he was here, silent as the clouds, his horse shifting beneath him. She had learned not to ask for help. Not from neighbors who counted favors like coins, and not from a man who carried the past on his shoulders. Still, his presence stirred something she could not name. A mix of anger and relief, sharp and confusing as lightning. A small figure moved inside the shack. A child's cough slipped through the open door, thin and tired. The woman closed her eyes for a moment, then climbed down, boots thudding against the step. She wiped her hands on her skirt and went inside. The children sat close together, wrapped in a blanket that had once been bright. Their faces were pale, eyes too old for their years. They watched her with trust that cut deep. She smiled for them, though her arms ached and her chest felt tight. Outside, the wind shifted. The horse stamped. The man dismounted at last. He tied the reins to a post that leaned like an old man and walked closer, slow and careful. He stopped a few steps from the door, hat in hand. Rain began to fall in heavy drops, darkening the dirt between them. "I saw the storm coming," he said. His voice was rough, as if it had not been used much. She did not answer at first. She set another board against the wall, measuring with her eye. When she spoke, it was even and low. "Storms always come," he nodded, gaze fixed on the broken roof. "You should not be up there alone." "I am," she said. "That is what matters." Silence stretched between them. Thunder rolled, closer now. He glanced toward the children, then back to her. "They need more than boards?" Her jaw tightened. "They need this roof to hold." He took a step forward, then stopped. "I can help." She finally faced him. For a moment the storm faded, and there was only the man who looked so much like the one she lost. The same build, the same quiet way of standing. But there were differences too. Guilt sat heavy in his eyes. Something unspoken pressed at his mouth. "Why now?" she asked. He swallowed. "Because I should have come sooner." That was not an answer. Not the kind that filled an empty cupboard or kept rain from soaking through a child's blanket. She turned back to the wall. "If you mean to stand there, stand. If you mean to work, take the hammer." Rain fell harder. He did not move right away. Then he stepped forward, took the hammer from her hand, and began to set the board in place. His movements were sure, practiced from years on forgotten trails and long days under open sky. They worked side by side as the storm broke over them. No words passed between them, only the rhythm of labor and the sound of rain on wood. For a moment it felt like something almost whole. As they worked, an old memory drifted through her mind. A tale told by a woman from a nearby camp, a Native American tale of loss and return, of how the land remembers those who honor it. She wondered if the land remembered her, if it remembered him. When the worst of the rain passed, the roof stood stronger than before, not sound, but holding. He stepped back, breathing hard, and looked at what they had made. "It will last the night," he said. She nodded. "That is enough." The children peeked from the doorway, eyes wide. He offered them a small, careful smile. They did not smile back, but they did not hide either. That felt like something. The clouds began to lift, leaving the air cool and clean. Evening light broke through, touching the grass with gold. For a moment the land looked gentle. He cleared his throat. "I can stay," he said. "There's more to fix." She watched the light fade from the sky, felt the weight of the day settle in her bones. A Wild West love story was not something she believed in anymore. Cowboy romance belonged to other lives, not to a woman scraping by on Western survival. Yet, as she looked at him, standing uncertain with the hammer in hand, she felt a pull she could not deny. "Stay for the night," she said at last. "The storm may return." Relief crossed his face, quick and bright. He nodded. "I will sleep outside." She shook her head. "There is room by the fire." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. He hesitated, then followed her inside as the last light slipped away. Outside, the wind rose again, whispering through the grass like a warning. Inside the small shelter, the fire crackled low. The past pressed close, and the future waited, uncertain and near. The fire burned low, fed by splintered scraps that once held the roof. Smoke curled along the ceiling and slipped out through the gaps, carrying the smell of damp wood and dust. The children slept close together, their breaths shallow but steady. Outside, the wind moved around the shack, testing the boards as if deciding whether to return. He sat near the door, back against the wall, hat resting on his knee. She kept to the far side, mending a tear in the blanket with slow, careful stitches. The space between them felt wider than the room itself. She had not asked his name. She did not need to. It lived in her memory, tied to another voice, another laugh, another life that had ended on that frozen rise. Still, seeing him by firelight unsettled her, the same strong hands, the same quiet way of listening. It stirred grief that had never truly settled. He watched the fire draw tight. The crackle of wood seemed loud in the silence. "The land's been mean this year," he said at last. "Drought, then storms. Folks are moving on." She nodded without looking up. "They always do. I rode through the old west town this morning," he went on. "Half the storefronts are boarded?" The mill closed. Her needle paused. She felt the truth of it like a weight. Frontier life did not forgive weakness. It only waited for it. "They talk," he said, quieter now. "About you." Her shoulders stiffened. "They always have." He shifted, uneasy. "They say a widow can't hold land alone, that the children would be better placed elsewhere." Her fingers tightened on the thread until it bit into her skin. "Placed," she repeated. "As if they were cattle." He lifted his hand slightly as if to show he meant no harm. "I don't agree. That doesn't stop them," she said. "Nor the land." A long pause followed. The wind pressed again, and the boards answered with a low creak. She finished the stitch and tied it off. When she looked up, his eyes were on the children. "I should have come," he said. "When he fell sick?" She studied his face. The guilt there was raw, unhidden. "Why didn't you?" He stared at the fire until the flames reflected in his eyes. "I made a promise once, to leave this place. To never come back." She asked. He exhaled slowly. "To myself." That answer told her enough. Men in the West carried promises like scars, some earned, some foolish. "Promises break," she said. "Some shouldn't," he replied. Outside, a coyote called, its cry thin and lonely. The sound crept under her skin. She remembered nights when her husband stood at the door with a rifle across his arms, listening to the dark. She remembered believing that nothing could reach them while he lived. "He loved this land," she said softly, surprising herself. He nodded. "He did." said the soil knew his name. A memory stirred unbidden. A story told by an old woman who came through with a small band, speaking of how the earth remembers footsteps and keeps score. A Native American tale, she had called it, passed down through winters and wars. The land gives and takes, she had said, but it never forgets. He thought the land would protect you, he said. She met his gaze then. The land protects no one. We protect each other. The words hung between them, sharp and fragile. He looked away first. Morning came gray and cold. The storm had passed, leaving puddles in the low spots and a hush over the plain. She woke early, as she always did, and stepped outside to check the roof. It had held, though the boards still gaped in places. He was already awake, tending a small fire outside. He handed her a tin cup without speaking. The coffee was weak but warm. As the children stirred, he kept his distance, fixing a hinge on the door, mending a tear in the cloth. He worked like a man trying not to be noticed. That, she thought, might be the most dangerous thing of all. Later, when the children played nearby, she walked the edge of the property, checking the fence posts. The land stretched wide and empty, beautiful and cruel. She could see the faint line of a trail cutting through the grass, a forgotten path used by traders and bands long before settlers claimed it. The trail brought travelers, and travelers brought trouble. He joined her there, hands on his hips. "You're too close to that trail. It was here before me," she said. "Before the town? That doesn't make it safe." She faced him. "Nothing here is safe," he nodded, conceding the point. "There have been riders moving through, not all honest." Her stomach tightened. "I have little worth taking. That's never stopped men." The truth of it chilled her more than the wind. Frontier life demanded strength, but it also demanded trust, and trust had failed her before. "Why stay?" she asked suddenly. "You could ride on, find easier ground?" He hesitated. "I tried that, and," she pressed. It didn't hold. She studied him, searching for the shape of his past. She saw a man worn thin by the road, carrying loss he would not name. Perhaps they were more alike than she cared to admit. By afternoon, clouds gathered again, lighter this time but persistent. As he lifted another board, a rider appeared on the distant rise, then another. They moved slow, watching. He followed her gaze. His posture changed, alert. "You know them?" She shook her head. "But they know this place." The riders did not approach. They lingered, then turned away, disappearing along the trail. The tension they left behind felt heavier than their presence. "That won't be the last," he said. She looked at the children, then at the fragile walls of the shack. "I won't run?" "I didn't ask you to." Evening settled again, quiet but uneasy. As the light faded, she felt the pull of something dangerous and necessary growing between them. Not love, not yet. Something forged by shared ground and shared fear. When night fell, the wind carried distant voices from the trail, too far to hear words, close enough to unsettle sleep. She lay awake, listening, knowing the land was watching, and that the choices ahead would cost more than either of them wished to pay. The voices on the trail did not last long. They faded into the night as if swallowed by the grass, yet the sound stayed in her mind long after the land went still. She lay with her eyes open, listening for the creak of boards, the soft shift of boots, the smallest sign that the dark had decided to come closer. Near the door, he sat with his back to the wall, awake as well. The fire inside had burned down to embers, but he kept a small lantern lit, turned low so the flame would not call out to anyone passing. In the weak light, his face looked harder, carved by wind and regret. "You sleep," he murmured without turning. "I can't," she answered. He nodded once, as if he understood too well. Outside, the night carried the smell of wet earth and distant smoke. A coyote cried again, then stopped, and the silence that followed felt planned. She thought of the town, of the way people looked at her when she walked past with the children close. Some faces held pity, others held judgment, and a few held hunger for what little they could take. There were rules in an old West town, spoken and unspoken, and a widow standing alone was seen as an opening. She shifted under the blanket, careful not to wake the children. "They want me gone," she said softly. He kept his eyes on the door. "They want what you have. What I have is broken boards and a patch of hard land." "That land has water under it," he said. Your husband found it. Word travels, her breath caught. She had heard whispers even before his death. Men in town spoke of dry wells and dying cattle, and when they looked toward her place, their eyes lingered a moment too long. We never told anyone, she said. He told me, he replied, and there was a weight behind it. He wanted me to know in case something happened. The words stung. As if her husband had seen the future and tried to leave a rope behind. She stared into the dark ceiling. He trusted you. I didn't earn it, he said. For a moment she wanted to ask what he meant, to pull the truth from him like a nail from rotten wood. But some truths came with blood, and she could not afford more of that. Morning arrived with pale light and a sky that looked bruised. The children woke hungry. She made a thin porridge and watched them eat, counting each spoonful as if it were gold. He offered to ride into town for flour and salted meat, but her eyes narrowed at the thought. You think they won't notice you, she said. He understood the warning. They already saw me. That doesn't mean they trust you, she replied. His mouth tightened. They don't. The way he said it told her there was history there, a shadow tied to his name. She felt it hovering at the edge of their fragile shelter, waiting to step in. Still, hunger did not wait for pride. I'll go, she said. He looked up, sharp. No, it's my place, she answered. My children. My risk? He stood tall and firm. I won't let you walk into that town alone, the words landed heavy. Not a request, not a favor. A decision he had made without asking her. Her throat tightened with anger that felt too close to fear. You won't let me, she repeated. His eyes held hers. I know what men do when they think a woman has no one. The truth of it cut through her anger. She remembered hands that lingered too long when she paid for goods. A drunk voice calling her name from behind the saloon. A storekeeper's smile that never reached his eyes. She looked away first. Then we go together. The ride into town was silent. The children stayed behind, tucked under the care of an older neighbor woman who owed her a small debt. As she mounted the horse behind him, her hands hovered a moment before settling against his coat. The closeness felt strange, wrong, and yet it warmed a part of her she had kept cold since winter. His back was steady beneath her. His scent was leather and smoke and open sky. It was too easy to imagine another ride, another man, another time. That thought made her pull back, as if it burned. The old West town appeared like a worn-out promise. Dusty street, false front buildings, a hitching rail crowded with tired horses. People moved slow, watching. The air carried the smell of manure, sweat, and something sour beneath it. Eyes found them the moment they entered. A man outside the general store spat into the dirt and murmured something to his friend. A woman near the laundry line paused, hand on a wet sheet, gaze fixed on the widow with a look that held both curiosity and warning. Children stopped playing, their laughter falling silent. He dismounted first, then helped her down. His hand touched her waist briefly, steadying her. The contact was careful, respectful, but it sent a ripple through her all the same. She hated that her body still remembered warmth. They walked into the store. The storekeeper's smile was thin. Well, the man drawled, look who rode back in. His gaze slid to her, then to him, lingering with an ugly knowing. She felt the room tighten. He did not answer. He placed coins on the counter. Flour, beans, salt. The storekeeper raised an eyebrow. That's a heavy order. They'll pay, the man added quietly, as if speaking to the storekeeper alone. She's got land. Her stomach twisted. She kept her face calm. We'll pay, she said, voice flat. The storekeeper scooped the flour with slow motions. Heard you got help now, he said, nodding at the man beside her. Heard you got family watching over you, family. The word was meant to sound kind. It didn't. It sounded like a hook. Not watching, her companion said. Working, the storekeeper's smile widened slightly. A noble thing. Course some folks might say you owe it to this town to do what's best. She looked him in the eye. What's best for my children is not decided behind a counter. The storekeeper's smile faded. The air in the room sharpened. For a moment she thought he might say more, might push harder. Then another voice cut in, rough and familiar. Leave her be. A rancher stepped into the doorway, broad-shouldered, gray at the temples. His eyes held the kind of authority earned through years and hard choices. She recognized him. He had stood near the grave and said nothing, hat in hand. The storekeeper shrugged, backing off. "Just talking," he muttered. The rancher's gaze moved to the man beside her. Something flickered there, old and unresolved. "I didn't expect to see you in this town again," the rancher said. He met the rancher's stare without flinching. "I didn't expect to come back, yet here you are," the rancher replied. She felt the tension between them like a tight rope, a past wound shared and unspoken. Outside, as they loaded supplies, a group of men leaned near the saloon, watching openly now. One of them, younger and restless, stepped forward. "You aiming to stay out there?" the man called, voice loud enough for the street. "On your brother's land?" Her companion's shoulders stiffened. "I'm aiming to keep a roof over children," the younger man smiled. "Not kind." "Children ain't yours." The words hit like a slap. She inhaled sharply, anger rising, but he moved first, stepping closer to the man in a way that spoke of danger without needing violence. "Don't speak of them again," he said, low and steady. The younger man hesitated, then forced a laugh, masking fear with pride. "This town don't forget," he said. "And it don't forgive easy." As they rode out, she could feel eyes on her back the whole way. The supplies felt heavier, the trail longer. Halfway home, the wind shifted, carrying the sound of hooves. He turned in the saddle, scanning the horizon. 2 riders followed at a distance. Her throat tightened. "They're not hunting deer," she whispered. "No," he said. "They're hunting answers." She clung to his coat, not from affection, but from fear. Still, in that moment, her hands fit there as if they belonged. The riders did not close in. They stayed behind like shadows, letting themselves be seen, a warning, a promise. As the shack came into view, the sky darkened again, and she felt the fragile hope inside her tremble. Love might be possible, but in the Old West, nothing precious stayed untested. And the land, remembering everything, waited to see what they would sacrifice to hold on. The 2 riders stayed back until the shack came close, then turned off toward the low hills as if they had only been passing through. But the message was plain. They knew the way. They knew the place. And they wanted the widow to know she was not unseen. He did not speak as he helped her down from the horse. His eyes kept moving, scanning the horizon, the grass, the broken fence line. The children ran to her the moment they saw her, wrapping thin arms around her waist, pressing their faces into her skirt as if they feared she might vanish. She held them tight, swallowing the ache that rose in her throat. Inside, she put away the flour and beans with hands that would not quite stop trembling. She told the children to eat, to stay close, to mind the wind. She made her voice calm, because calm was the only gift she could give them. When dusk fell, he checked the roof again, then walked the fence with a worn rifle across his arms. He moved like a man who had spent too many nights listening for trouble, like a man who knew the shape of danger before it arrived. She stood at the door and watched him disappear into the gray evening. The open plain looked endless, beautiful in a cruel way. The grass rolled like waves. The sky carried a thin line of red near the horizon, like a wound trying to close. Her mind drifted back to the winter. To the last day her husband spoke clearly. He had been weak, skin-hot with fever, eyes glassy. Yet his voice had steadied when he took her hand. "If I don't make it," he had whispered, "don't let them take the land." She had tried to hush him, to deny it. He had squeezed her hand harder, surprising in his weakness. "Promise me," she had promised, because promises were all that held a person upright when the world leaned in. Later, after he died, she had learned something else. Promises could become chains. The door creaked. He stepped inside, rain-dark at the shoulders. He set the rifle in the corner and removed his hat. The air between them felt tight, like a rope stretched too far. "They'll come," he said. She did not ask who. She already knew. "When?" she replied. He looked toward the children, who were eating in silence, eyes flicking up at every sound. "Soon? They tested us today. Next they'll press harder." Her stomach clenched. "We have nothing worth it." He crossed the room and lowered his voice. "They don't want your flour. They want what your husband found." The words landed like cold iron. She stared at him. "You told them?" "No," he said quickly, almost fiercely. "I never spoke of it." Not once? She believed him, yet fear did not loosen its grip. Then how? He hesitated. That pause held the weight of something he did not want to say. Your husband wasn't the only one who knew. Her chest tightened. Who else? He looked down, jaw working. Me and one other. Her voice went thin. Who? He finally met her gaze. A man I used to ride with before I left. He's the kind that follows rumors like a wolf follows blood. A shadow passed through her. She remembered the way the men by the saloon watched her supplies, the way they spoke of land as if it belonged to whoever had the strength to claim it. You brought this here, she said softly. Pain flashed across his face. I didn't bring it, but I might have led it back. The children's spoons paused. The older one watched them, eyes sharp with fear and curiosity. She lowered her voice even more. Why did you leave before? She asked. Why did you swear never to come back? He sat on the bench near the fire as if the weight of the question pushed him down. His hands rested on his knees, fingers rough and cracked. He stared at them a long moment, then spoke like a man confessing to the ground. My brother and I... We weren't close when we were young, he began. He was steady. I was restless. I rode with men who didn't care what they took, so long as they took it first. I told myself it was survival. Western survival, that's what we called it. But it was only hunger wearing a polite name. She listened, heart pounding. There was a job, he continued. A payroll wagon, easy money, they said. No one would get hurt, they said. His voice turned rough. But someone did. A guard, a father, and when it went wrong, I froze. I didn't stop it. I didn't do a thing but watch. The word settled over her like ash. She could see it now, a younger version of him, hat low, hands trembling, watching a choice get made while he stood silent, just as he had stood silent when she needed him most. I rode back to my brother, he said, thinking he'd fix it, thinking his steadiness could wash my hands clean. Instead, he looked at me like I was a stranger, she swallowed. What did he do? He paid, he said, barely audible. Not with money. With his name, he went to the sheriff and gave information. He did it to stop my old crew from running free. He did it knowing it would bring trouble to him. To you, to this land. Her breath caught. She had never known. Her husband had carried that alone, keeping his silence like a shield over her head. That's why people watched him, she whispered. That's why some hated him, he nodded. They called him a traitor. They called him worse. But he did it anyway. A Wild West love story was not meant to be built on such ground. Cowboy romance was supposed to be simple and tailies, a glance across a dance hall, a shared ride under a soft sky. But the Old West was not soft. It was made of hard truths and buried costs. She stared at the fire, feeling grief rise fresh. He died with that weight, she said. Yes, he replied. And I ran from mine. Silence filled the room. The children ate again, quieter than before, as if they sensed the walls listening. Outside, a sound carried through the wind, hooves, not far. Not one horse, several. He stood at once, reaching for the rifle. He blew out the lantern until only the fire's glow remained, dim and low. She moved to the window gap, peering through the cloth. The night was thick, but she saw shapes moving at the edge of the grass, riders, 3, 4, maybe more. The children froze, eyes wide. He crouched beside her. Keep them low, he whispered. No sound. Her hands shook as she pulled the children close, pressing them down behind the barrel near the fire. Their little bodies trembled under her arms. Outside, a voice called, carrying false kindness. Evening, it said. We come in peace. She recognized that tone. Men who came in peace did not ride in the dark. He stayed still, rifle ready but not raised. His jaw was clenched so tight she could see the muscle jump. The voice came again, nearer. We're only looking to talk. We heard you got company now. A laugh followed, low and mean. She felt the past closing in, the way a storm rolls back after a brief clearing. All her fears gathered at once, losing the land, losing the children, losing what little hope she had let herself feel with the man beside her. He leaned close, his mouth near her ear. If they force the door, he whispered, you take the children through the back. Follow the dry creek. There's a stand of cottonwoods. Hide there, her throat tightened. And you? I'll hold them, he said. The words struck her harder than thunder. Sacrifice offered as if it were the only thing he could give. She shook her head, fierce. No, his eyes met hers in the dim firelight. It's the only way I can make right what I broke. Outside, the riders dismounted, boots crunched in the dirt. A fist struck the door, once, then again. Open up, the voice said, the kindness gone now. We know you're in there. The children whimpered, muffled against her shoulder. He lifted the rifle, breathing steady, eyes fierce. If I fall, he whispered, tell them I tried. Tears burned her eyes, not from weakness, but from the cruel ache of hope. Love felt possible, just barely, and that made the fear sharper than ever. The door shuddered under a heavier blow. The latch groaned. She gathered the children, ready to run, heart pounding like hoofbeats, and then the latch snapped. The door began to swing inward, darkness spilling into the room. The door burst inward with a crack of wood, slamming against the wall hard enough to shake the room. Cold night air rushed in, carrying the smell of sweat, leather, and damp earth. Lantern light from outside spilled across the floor, throwing long shadows that writhed like living things. He stepped forward before they could fully enter, rifle raised but not yet fired. His stance was firm, feet planted, shoulders squared. Not a man looking for a fight, but a man ready to finish one. Stop, he said, voice steady and clear. The riders paused. 3 men stood in the doorway now, faces half-lit, eyes sharp and measuring. Behind them, horses shifted and snorted. One man, taller than the rest, smiled slowly. You always did like playing the hero, the man said. Didn't think you had it in you anymore. The woman tightened her hold on the children, heart hammering. She could feel their fear, hot and shaking against her ribs. She stayed low, eyes never leaving the men. You've said your piece, he replied. Leave, the tall man laughed softly. That land don't belong to you, or her. Not really. It was earned, he said. And paid for with silence, the man shot back. And blood? The words hung heavy. The past had caught up, just as he feared. He felt it then, clear and sharp. This was the moment he had been running from, and the one he could no longer escape. He lowered the rifle, just a little. There's water under that land, he said. Enough to save cattle. Enough to save this valley. You take it by force, and you'll spill more blood than you already have? Or you walk away and I tell the sheriff everything, every name, every trail, the tall man's smile faltered. You'd hang yourself with us? He nodded. If that's the cost? Silence stretched. The wind moved through the grass outside, whispering like judgment. One of the men shifted, uneasy. Another glanced back toward the horses. The tall man studied him, then looked past him into the room. His gaze landed on the children, huddled and shaking. Something changed then. Not kindness, calculation. You'd risk them, the man said quietly. On your conscience. He felt the weight of the choice press down on him. Then he shook his head. No, I'd save them. By ending this, a new voice cut through the tension. That's enough. A figure stepped into the light from the side of the shack. The rancher from town stood there, shotgun resting easy, but ready across his arms. 2 more men stood behind him, faces set, badges catching the lantern glow. I figured you'd show, the rancher said to the riders. You've been circling too long. The tall man's jaw tightened. This ain't your concern. It is when it turns ugly, the rancher replied. And it was headed there. The riders exchanged glances. The balance had shifted. 4 against 1 was one thing. 4 against many was another. This land stays with the widow, the rancher went on. Water rights will be settled proper, lawfully. You walk away now, or you answer for more than rumors. The tall man spat into the dirt. His eyes burned with resentment, but he knew when the game had turned. Slowly, he stepped back. This ain't over, he muttered. It is for tonight, the rancher said. The riders mounted and rode off into the dark, hooves fading into the open plain. The silence that followed was deep and trembling, like the land itself letting out a long breath. Inside, the woman sagged against the wall, legs weak. The children clung to her, sobbing now that fear no longer had to be held quiet. She pressed her face into their hair, whispering soft words she did not remember learning. He lowered the rifle and stood very still, as if afraid to move might break the moment. The rancher stepped inside, eyes moving over the damage, the children, the woman. "You did right," he said simply. "Both of you." She looked up. "They won't come back." "No," he said. "Not with witnesses?" "Not with the truth coming daylight." He turned to the man. "Your brother paid a high price." But it saved more than he ever knew. The rancher left them then, the night closing behind him. Later, when the children slept again, curled close and safe, the woman sat by the fire, hands wrapped around a tin cup. Dawn crept slowly across the sky, pale and unsure. He stood near the door, watching the light grow. "You were ready to give everything," she said quietly. He nodded. "I owed it." She studied him for a long moment. "You don't owe me," she said, "or them. Not anymore." He turned, surprised. "My husband chose his path," she went on. "You chose yours tonight." The words settled between them, warm and heavy. He stepped closer, careful, as if crossing fragile ground. "I won't leave," he said. "Not if you don't ask me to." She felt the ache in her chest ease, just a little. "Stay," she said. "We have work to do." Spring came slowly, but it came. The roof was fixed proper, the fence stood straight. Water was drawn clean and clear from the ground, just as her husband promised it would be. Word spread, but this time it brought help, not hunger. The town changed in small ways. Not kinder, perhaps, but fairer. Some evenings, when the sun dipped low and the grass turned gold, she watched him work and felt something like peace settle in her bones. Love did not arrive all at once. It grew the way the land healed, patient and earned. At night, when the children slept, they sat together by the fire, speaking of simple things, of weather, of work, of the quiet future. And sometimes, when the wind moved just right across the plain, it sounded almost like the land remembering them kindly, not as people who took, but as people who stayed.